productivity on A Gamer's Guide to Productivity. Today, we are joined once again for part two of the interview with Thomas R. Wilson, founder of R&H Creative Advocacy and Storytelling. We previously had technical difficulties with my ISP internet service provider, and we were cut short when I was asking about a specific or seemingly small moment in his life that had a lasting impact, and he was giving us a detailed breakdown of a sensory overload situation that happened in Disney World. And just for a small little recap, Thomas, let everybody know where you come from and as well as what that sensory overload information was.
Definitely. So I'm located in Colorado. I always like to say that I come from stories, though, as my life is filled with so many of them, and I find so many inspirations. But to briefly recap what happened, I don't know if anyone else out there has had the experience of, I think it was the Honey I Shrunk the Kids ride that they had at the Disney World or Disneyland park. I always get them confused in my mind. Um, but essentially, to sum it up really quickly, this is a ride that involved like flashing lights, stimuli involving like the feeling of rats running by your feet, as well as like various intense images for younger people. And really, what tipped me over the edge was the kind of sensation of rats running by my feet. I can understand wanting things to be immersive and things like that. And I mean, by means am I mad at the theme park or anything like that. Um, but if you're a person who has really strong sensory feelings, the feeling of rats running by your feet is not something I think anyone's ever going to like. And
Mm-mm.
I'm trying to simplify it down not to trigger people listening. But I actually remember as a kid being so overstimulated. I was in my teens and I was crying because there was just so much going on.
Right.
And that and many situations like that are why I do the work I do, because like concerts and town gatherings and so many events are not tailored to people who have sensory needs. We get overwhelmed. I love a good concert, but I can only really tolerate it for like 30 minutes and I'm ready to get up and move and not be there. Been to baseball games, same
Mm-hmm.
thing. Um, and so my work is really divided into this idea that anyone deserves to have a quality sensory friendly event. You don't have to be neurodiverse. You
Mm.
don't have to, live in an underserved community. The mentality is if you run the event well, if you hold it up with standards and you make sure that people there are honored on all levels and all accessibility. And really quickly, in my definition of accessibility, it's more than just physically accessible or noise levels. It's honoring all of who a person is. It's
Mm.
making sure spiritually, mentally, auditory wise, the smells are reasonable, things like that. Something a lot of people don't think about with accessibility, but that's part of it. And when we do that and we honor the people at our events with respect for where they're coming from and respect in what you're doing, there is a really cohesive, beautiful thing that will happen in which people will feel calm, they'll feel happy, they'll feel relaxed, and they can actually break away and move into a state of mind that is more natural. I feel like a lot of things today, we're constantly pushing people into further boxes, into more
Mm-hmm.
technology, more noises, more stimuli, and that's not healthy for the human brain.
That's actually pretty true. Now, how do you think the world would benefit if it could find those accessible levels in much more public settings?
So that's definitely a big part of my work. I've done consulting, I've done help in various spaces to make that happen. I think one of the things that's really hard in that I should note is I don't think there's ever going to be a point when there's going to be tens of thousands of people at a baseball game or a football game or at a concert where they're going to be able to honor every single sensory need or every noise level. That's just not going to happen. But I think if we really spent the time more as a general community in the United States and otherwise and started implementing mentalities and acknowledging things that suit people outside of the norm. That's a big thing that I fight against. Is a lot of people, when they do events, they're trying to match as many people as possible,
Mhm.
and they're trying to only hit those neurotypical people without disabilities, without mental illness, all of these things. And what I counteract in that is the mentality. If we actually took into consideration those people and we tried to match the setting more to what actually works for people more inclusively, I think we would have a better understanding of what these events could be. And I think the world in general would be a more inclusive place. I touched on before, I do D&D and other events, but I think there's also a lot of gatekeeping that happens
Mm.
in events in general, where people look at the world and say, "Oh, if you can't be here, then oh well," or "We don't want you if," or "You're just not welcome if you have autism and you're going to be verbalizing." A lot of people use the word screaming, but a lot of people who don't communicate like you and I, they vocalize. It's a much more inclusive term, but it means they're communicating in a way to help communicate. I think if we really sat down and as businesses, as people, we started looking at what we can do for people as a whole, let alone its own very limited segment of the population of people who don't have these extra needs or these needs, we could really build foundations that are far more inclusive and get more people into events and make more money as a world, but also make it a softer, gentler space for people who need that. And I really believe it's not a matter of being overly sensitive, it's a matter of honoring the person.
Now, to ask specifically, how do you currently find balance and maintain a sense of well-being in the fast-paced and often chaotic world? And the reason why I want to ask is because you mentioned, and cool DVZ cup, by the way. And I do want to ask because you mentioned some techniques that you already employ, such as only staying in a concert or baseball game for 30 minutes at a time. And so, is that what you would suggest to others?
Do you mean in terms of what I do for events or other people who have those needs?
Others that have those needs and they want to go to like a concert and they see the blaring they know that there's going to be blaring noises. So how would you advise them to try to find that balance of, I want to attend but I also don't want to be overly discomfort for 90 minutes? So how would you advise them to employ some tactics?
So, one of the harsh things I think with concerts nowadays is they are so expensive, especially like bigger artists. So there's actually a few things that people can do that are really helpful, and I realize a lot of people probably don't know this. So there are sensory disrupting headphones that people can use, and there are companies out there that have managed to put them in earbud form, and they help
Mm,
reduce noise and everything still to be heard. If you are with someone who has the need to get up and move because it's too loud or there's too many people, I cannot encourage you more enough to get up and move with that individual. I know a lot of people who've been like, "Oh, go off and walk on yourself." And for people like me, with my own neurodiversity, with my own sensory stuff, me going from a loud auditorium to a room filled with people that's essentially a ramp or like a circle, that's just as disruptive and just as intrusive. So I recommend going with those people, making sure they feel comfortable where they're at. Additionally, what I would also say is plan before you go to an event.
mm,
So many times, you can't plan for everything. The
right.
nature of a lot of work I do is making it as I go. But if you can plan those headphones, if you can plan where you're going to go, if you need to go somewhere, if you have to contact someone to get you, like if you go off by yourself and you're comfortable doing that, but you feel overloaded, you can contact, have that person in your group you can contact and feel safe talking to. I would also advise having someone outside of the event that you can call, and if you feel like intensely upset,
Mhm.
talk to a friend that can help you calm down and can help you assess what you can do. I realize a lot of people don't have that, so I would recommend bringing a sensory toy. I call them sensory toys, but they are meant for all ages. A big part of my work is centered around active play and the mentality that playing is actually very conducive to people's health. Um, and if you have a sensory toy, don't be afraid to use it. It's important. And the other thing I would really say, there's so much I can say in this, but I would also advise giving yourself grace and empathy. I think a lot
Mm.
of people go to events and they're like, I'm going to socialize, I'm going to do these things. And then there's blaring music or there's a lot of noise and a lot of people. And I think a lot of us internalize that and shame ourselves and make fun of ourselves or say, why couldn't I do this? Because everyone else here can do it.
Mhm.
Um, that is a really intense shame that a lot of people in underserved communities are taught to embrace in themselves, that intrinsic shaming, and that's not healthy. It's not healthy for anyone. It's not healthy for people who have trauma. It's not healthy for people who have sensory needs. It's not healthy for anyone. So I always advise give yourself time to care for yourself at those events.
Oh, that's a wonderful response right there. Now, before I go into my more fun portion of the interview, I did want to give you the opportunity to let everybody know where they can reach out to you if they want a D&D master, a game master, and if they also want a consulting session with you as well. Where can they go to render your services?
So I definitely have a link tree, which I was on another interview and someone recommended it, and that's a lifesaver for me. So I can definitely make sure everyone has access to that. I also have an email, which is ndttrpg@gmail, which I realize there's a lot of very similar sounding letters in that. So I can make sure that's written down below. One thing I always advise people is it's okay to ask questions, even if you have several questions. I'm a big believer that that's another thing many of us are taught not to do is ask
Mhm,
questions.
mhm,
And I find that to be a very quick way to remove the power from a person, is shut down
mm.
those questions. And I think that's why it's so popular in so many systems to have people stop asking questions.
Okay, perfect. I put the link tree down below. So if you're interested in a D&D game master or consulting session with Thomas, hit him up. And now with some of my fun interview style questions. Okay. So first question, do you find that it's almost like a cheat that you have a neurodiverse brain, that when you read a book, for example, you have so many more layers of your imagination that's being engaged, thus allowing you to feel so transported vividly into fantasy based worlds, including D&D gaming as well?
So I would say yes for me. One thing I do want to say is there are actually many neurodiverse people who don't have vivid imaginations,
Mm,
really struggle with that visualization aspect. Um, and I think it's important for all people to remember that we all have strengths. So if you are in this and you are listening to me say that I can do that, please don't feel bad. This is something, a skill set I have, but I've often heard people say if everyone's special, no one's special. And my mentality is the exact opposite. If we accept ourselves and know each other well enough, we know that all people are special. We all have those skills.
okay, okay. Now, what would you say would be your favorite book, game, or experience that you felt so vividly there that you forgot that you were reading or you were just in a game? Something that truly made you like, wow, like I'm here, and then afterward you're like, oh wow, that wasn't real life.
That's a hard one. So I'd have to say book. I was actually listening to Neil Gaiman's The Sandman,
Ooh.
the first volume. The audio version of that is a master class. They created like a full audio play for that. Got like big name actors, all kinds of stuff. I went on a walk for an hour and a half once, not realizing it was an hour and a half listening to that. I didn't even make it all the way through, and I loved it. And I think for a game, oh goodness, a game, I would have to say, I don't know if you've ever heard of the game Journey. I think it was on PlayStation 4. I think it was a port over, but it's one of the most calming games I've ever played. It's about a pilgrimage. Someone's going on a pilgrimage
Hmm.
through the desert. That game, I only like you can finish it in 20 minutes if you know how to, but it's one of the most visually beautiful games I've ever played. And for a while, that was like my weekly Zen out game because it's
Wow.
just a visually amazing journey. Like there's no actual dialogue. It's just story told through pictures and journeying through a desert.
Ooh, okay. I'm having fun. Okay, okay. If you could have a conversation with any historical figure, living or dead, who would it be and what would you ask them?
So that's a good one as well. I normally would say Edgar Allan Poe because he is my literary hero. But to be
Eee.
honest, I feel like that would be a rough conversation to have, honestly. It would either be one of the best things ever or just like I'd leave more depressed than I've ever been in my life. So I would think I'd have to say, um, I feel like I'd have to go with Steve Ditko of Marvel Comics. If you
Mm.
don't know who he is, he partnered with Stan Lee to create like many iconic characters, and unfortunately, he's kind of fallen to the wayside compared to Stan Lee. A lot of
Right.
people know who he is, a lot of people don't. But I feel like just having that conversation with him, with like his journey, his writing process, his art process, all of that, what that would be like would be so cool because he was forgotten.
Oh, nice. That's nice choice. If you could witness any historical event from history, no alterations, you're just a fly on the wall, which would you pick to witness?
So I would have to say, um, that I got two answers again. I would either have to say the painting of the Mona Lisa, or the oh goodness, the founding. I just had it. I'm gonna go with a completely different one. I would have to say the painting of the Mona Lisa or the creative process of the Lord of the Rings being written.
Ooh, that's tough. Wow. Mona Lisa or LOTR? Two master classes. Wow. That was nice, nice. Ooh. Okay, now that makes me think if you could step into the shoes of any fictional character of any fictional medium, whether gaming, whether D&D, whether music, whether movie, any fictional medium, what character would you choose to step into their shoes? Who would it be and why?
Um, Such a bright. So I think I've either got to say, um, so there is a movie called Midnight in Paris.
Hmm.
It's a movie with Owen Wilson. He is the main character. He is exploring kind of like a point in his life where he's like idolizing like 1930s Paris, 1920s, 1930s Paris, where the great expressionists were there. The guy who wrote The Great Gatsby was there, his wife, all of that like literary kind of exploration. And he goes from like 21st century through some unknown means to that point in time. And that is one of my favorite recent movies because it's done so well. And the actors, all of it is such a beautiful representation of what art can be and what can appreciation can be. And I would have to say, if I had that ability to go back in time like that and not really alter anything in the past too much, I would have to say I would be that exact journey of going through 1930s Paris with all of those great writers and artists, getting to hang out with them, getting to see their process, having my writing compared by them, all of those things. If I had that just free blank slate to do that, I would do that. I would be that character.
Ooh, okay, okay. Um, if you could learn any skill within the next 30 seconds, instantly master, you have 10,000 hours worth of experience, your top 0.01% in the whole world in that skill set, which skill would it be and how would you use it to make a difference in the world?
So I'm going to try to be quick on this. I would have to say it would be um, the art of either sign language or the ability to master all sign language in those 30
Ooh,
seconds. The
ooh.
main reason for that is I'm not great with my hands, and sign language is one of those things I've wanted to learn how to do for majority of my life. And if I feel like I could use that like so expertly that I could do it while I'm talking and I could do any sign language in the world, I could really carry that over into helping more people, but also spreading the idea that communication goes beyond words. Like it's not just verbal processing, there's so much more to it.
That's that's a whole nother, that's like 30 languages right there. That's pretty radically amazing. Now you mentioned a whole lot of art and a whole lot of book writing, so that makes me think, who are your top 5 favorite authors all time?
Um, so I have to go with Edgar Allan Poe. He's been a literary hero. He wrote about so many things about mental health and things in a time when that was non-existent. So much respect for that. Got to say Neil Gaiman, and then have to say, oh gosh, so many choices. So I can't remember the author's name, but I think there's a book called My Dyslexia and Me. It's about a journey of someone who discovered he had dyslexia, something like My Dyslexia and Me. He had it when he found out in like late 40s, early 50s he had it, and it's kind of a brief like lecture about, well, brief summary of what his experience was as a award-winning writer realizing he had dyslexia. Number 4 has got to be Dr. Seuss. Um, Dr. Seuss's books have been around for a long time for a reason. Um, and then this is a bit of an odd one to add to this list, but the Paddington books. I would
Ooh.
have to, I can't remember the author's name, but Paddington was my all-time favorite children's story when I was a kid. I love the movies. And I think I love Winnie the Pooh, but I think Paddington is a bit more out there, a bit more obscure, but also well known. And I just love those books so much.
Wow, that's amazing top 5 list right there. Okay, so that was a little bit of the fun portion because I always like the what if, what you would do. Wait, hold on. I got one more for you. Okay. If you could travel to any fictional universe, which would it be and what adventure would you like to embark upon?
Um, Oh, that's another hard one. So many, so many choices. I would say The Sandman, but that one's pretty dark. Oh goodness. You know what? I mentioned Winnie the Pooh. I'm gonna choose Winnie the Pooh.
Oh,
That
nice.
universe. I feel like that's one of. I feel like Winnie the Pooh's very famous, but I feel like the side characters in Winnie the Pooh are some of the best written children's side characters in any story because they're so diverse and different, and they all have their subtleties, but they're all written so well and are so seamless. So I feel like I would want to, especially as an adult, go and explore the 100 Acre Woods.
Oh, nice, nice. Okay, okay. Now back to reality. Back to reality. Um, if you could write a letter to the younger version of you, what would you write to yourself about?
So I've heard a lot of people answer a question like this before, and they would say, "Be kinder to yourself. It will get better." Um, I think for me, especially being a younger kid who struggled, um, I would want to write a letter to myself, just telling myself to give myself grace, but like basically to remember to give myself grace, but to remember that no matter how hard it gets, no matter how much it hurts, if you look for the people in your life who will stand by you, even in your saddest moments, you will find them. You will be able to keep them, but you have to value them
Hmm.
and love them and honor them as much as you want them to honor you.
Oof, that's deep. Now, how do you think personally that advancements in technology will shape the future of storytelling and human connection?
So I think it really depends on how we as people are willing to use them. I know there's a lot of talk about AI and how it's bad for artists, but I mean, I've been around long enough. I'm not like super old, but I'm in my 30s. I've seen, the rise of computers and other things. I think AI and other technology will become massively instrumental to like underserved communities, people with neurodiversity, people who can't write physically,
Hmm.
but we have to get past this like corporate greed phase that all technology goes through. And I mean,
Hmm.
I say all technology because the printing press has gone through this, computers have gone through this, robots are still being talked about cutting people's jobs. We found so many other ways to make up for that. I, I don't like I understand enough, but I don't understand why we as people, our first reaction is how can this profit, like how can I make so much money from this I never have to work again, even if it comes at the price of the technology serving the people it can best serve. So I think if we start to really recognize what AI and technology and Zoom and all of these things can do for the betterment of people, which will come, it will come. There will be people who will start to do it more and more. I'm doing some of it, and I'm sure there are plenty others. When we get to that point of when corporate greed kind of dies down or is enough that people aren't jumping on everything about it, we get to the point when we start examining more and more how AI can be used to serve people, help us learn, and we use it as a tool that is going to benefit humanity, which is a big part of it. I think we're going to enter into a new age. I will say eventually there will be something new and all of this will happen again, I'm sure, because that seems to be the case. But we will, if we're willing, we will get to these points where it will help people and help stories and help our society.
Yeah, I think with human ingenuity, it's always just a matter of time until somebody discovers something new, whether it's the wheel, whether it's fire, whether it's cell phones, the internet, etc. Now, Last question. What is a question that you have always wanted to be asked in order to answer and you never have? And how would you answer it? And it could be nothing, but it could be something that you've always wanted to answer.
Um, hmm. There's so many. I would have to say, why do stories connect us all in the best way possible?
Ooh.
And my answer for that is stories are the foundation of human communication. They are the pathway to better questions, better information, and it is undeniable that stories are the one thing that unifies all of humanity for thousands and thousands of, years, millennia, whatever you believe.
Mm-hmm.
That is one of the great unifiers because no matter how much technology shifts and fades and transition, stories are here and stories will always be here.
Oh man, that was my last one, but you just made me think of another better question. Okay, this is gonna be potentially the last one because I don't know. You might make me think of new questions. Okay, if you could combine the skill set of certain authors that you really like, if you could combine like the the plot writing of author A with the character development of author B with the hook of author C, etc., how would you go about creating your favorite storyline possible with utilizing different Frankenstein level combinations between authors that you truly like? You have infinite amount of author combinations possible. What would be the ultimate favorite book that you could create with these skill sets combined?
So, going off of the ones that I've mentioned, I feel like I would love to see Neil Gaiman set a Sandman style story in the world of Edgar Allan Poe's books and
Mm,
make that a graphic novel. Sandman has some similarities already, but
mhm.
like give me like a series of Edgar Allan Poe graphic novels told by Neil Gaiman. I feel like that would be a massive success.
Ooh, okay, okay. That's a nice combination right there. Okay, that made me think of another one. All right. What would you define as a successful consulting session with you? If let's say the younger version of yourself that didn't have as many tools and the mindset that you have now, what after a session with you, what would you say like this was a successful session with me?
So I think it would definitely depend on what I was seeking, but I'm putting it in the realm of storytelling and neurodiversity and underserved communities. It would really have to start with the emphasis that sensory friendly events are not just for people with underserved communities, neurodiversity, things like that. It would then transition, hopefully, into the mindset of how to understand that better through the processes of why it's not just for underserved or neurodiverse or any community like that. And then it would break down into possibly ideas for how to implement that mentality into day to day lives. Now, I could do this for a variety of things,
Mhm.
but then really taking that mentality, transitioning into possible options to actually make that change,
Mhm.
um, with a focus on encouraging positive growth. I know a lot of people expect, something goes well, they expect I've ran into this, they're going to be a massive success overnight. That does not happen in this world. It really doesn't.
Right.
And so I would help them transition into the mindset of how to apply those, what the realistic expectations were. And at the end of that, I would want to make sure that they had the support, the resources, and the guidance to make sure they have that communication while making sure They know they have me as a resource to ask questions on. I'm sure I mentioned earlier my thought process towards questions. So many people are too afraid to ask questions. That's not where we should be as a society. So I'd want to make sure they have that knowledge. I'm there. And then I would want to encourage them through the active practice of that mindset from me by
Mhm.
answering the questions needed when they need them.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So guys, you heard it from Thomas. If you have these things that you have questions on and you need somebody that can provide you that empathetic listening ear, you already know who you need to hit up. And before I wrap up and hit him with the outro, once again, Thomas, let everybody know where they can go to have a session with you or have a gaming session with you or just have a question where they can shoot from you. Where can they go to communicate with you?
Definitely. So once again, you can check out my email. It'll make sure it's listed below. You can check out my link tree that has articles and videos, other podcast interviews, websites. I pretty much post everything new on there because it's important. And if you are in this moment like, hey, I want to reach out to Thomas, but I don't know if I should, can't necessarily go wrong by getting a couple quick questions out and getting the help that you may not know you need, or the guidance to do the work yourself. We need more people doing this work. It is so important.
Boom. Well, you guys heard it there. That concludes another power packed episode of A Gamer's Guide to Productivity with our amazing guest, Thomas Wilson. So, if you enjoyed today's insights into storytelling, advocacy, world of gaming, live fantasy building like questions, it's my favorite part of the podcast. Be sure to hit like, comment, and subscribe for more episodes like that. And remember, the game of life, you are the protagonist. So keep leveling up, keep grinding. As Thomas mentioned, you don't become an overnight success. It's a small, actionable steps, building blocks, and that includes asking questions. You may feel that these questions aren't the best, but Rome wasn't built in a day. It takes time to build and develop. And the more you put in, the more you get out. With that being said, have a phenomenal night. Take care, guys. Like, comment, subscribe once again.